You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I am royally ticked off at Alabama. You may have heard that Alabama basically, just outlawed abortion. And Georgia is following suit, and all of these are test cases deliberately planned to go up to, they hope, a stacked Supreme Court. Well, we have a show that is fittingly timely. The Janes are here. Actually, a new film, Ask for Jane. The producer, the star and engine behind getting the film made, and one of the original members of the Jane Collective, which, with incredible courage for years in the late 60s and early 70s, steered women towards safe, not butchered, not back alley abortions when the procedure was totally illegal. The new film will be in theaters very shortly, and we talk with all three of the women. And we have lots more coming up. There's Surrealism Corner, and there's Fighting Words, and before any of those, we have to go inside the headlines. Each time I begin working on this segment of the program, it's always tempting to regurgitate the past week's news or comment on it. So I have to remind myself time after time that this segment is called Inside the Headlines, inside them. And no matter what's going on in Trump world and how that eats up all the oxygen and the coverage, there is other news you may not have heard and may not have access to. You likely know, of course, about Don Jr., blah, blah, and about Lindsey Graham counseling Don Jr. to basically flout the law in Congress, and John Bolton conspiring with Donald Sr. to plan a unprovoked, perilous, distracting war, which we're on the brink of with Iran, to shift the focus off Trump's finances, or the failed Homeland Security plan to arrest thousands of parents and children in a blitz operation against migrants in 10 major U.S. cities, and so forth. But The Guardian has reported that a new gold rush is already taking place in outer space, even though we're not really there yet. Startups like the Asteroid Mining Corporation are planning to exploit heavenly bodies, that's other planets, asteroids, planetoids, moons, and so on, for precious metals and minerals. Now, there's an intrepid group of scientists who actually have foresight, who are already proposing that more than 85% of the solar system be off limits to such development, the primary goal being to ensure that humanity avoids a catastrophic future in which all the resources within its reach are permanently used up. Depleting one planet apparently is insufficient. We have to spread out. There's a new audiobook by Neil deGrasse Tyson, collaborating with Avis Lang. It's called Accessory to War, the unspoken alliance between astrophysics and the military. And, of course, he's a great defender of science, but he is taking on the fact that, as he puts it, scientists are the wagging tail on a large geostrategic dog, which makes decisions without direct reference to the desires of physicists. Hegemony drives science because science piggybacks on geopolitics. But maybe scientists, unlike the rest of humanity, have learned something, because this group of scientists insisting that 85% of the solar system be off limits to mining and development is another side of that same coin. War and commercial resources have always driven exploration, but there's no reason we can't change that. A new Morning Consult Ascend survey shows sadly unsurprising but disturbing results. White women see the gender pay gap quite clearly, but they manage not to see a racial pay gap among women. 67% of women, including 66% of white women, agreed that women are paid less than men for doing similar work. But when asked whether women of color are paid less than white women for doing the same work, that number dropped to 39% among all women and 34% among white women. When asked how helpful certain policies would be in supporting women interested in reaching executive positions, white women were less likely to characterize as helpful efforts that highlighted diversity, that's 52%, and mandatory diversity requirements within the company, also 52%. Then the policies they did not mention, including mentorship and mentorship programs, formal programs, and top executives, 67%, and legislation to ensure that men and women are paid equally for similar work. That was 67% response. Now, in fairness, we should note that some of these responses may very well be plain truths that reflect the experience these women have had at their various companies and corporations. But in any event, we have a lot of work to do to change consciousness among European American women, many of whom have yet to grasp the simple fact that their own survival, freedom, and power is inextricably linked with that of the status of all women, and that fact is one not to flee from in fright, but one to celebrate. A lot of work to be done. On a parallel line, new figures released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention were reported earlier this month, and they showed a similarly depressing and enraging reality. African American and Alaskan Native women died of pregnancy-related causes at a rate of about 3 times higher than those of European American women. The racial disparity has persisted, it's even grown, for years now, despite frequent calls to improve access for women of color to get better medical care. 60% of all pregnancy-related deaths could be prevented with better health care, communication, and support, as well as access to stable housing and transportation. The researchers concluded that from those statistics, these deaths associated with pregnancy are preventable. The United States has an atrocious record on maternal health compared with other high-income countries, even as maternal death rates fell by more than a third between 2000 and 2015 across the world. UNICEF reported that outcomes for American mothers worsened. The CDC also found that black women were 3.3 times more likely than white women to suffer a pregnancy-related death, and Native American and Alaska Native women were 2.5 times more likely to die than white women. Obstetrics emergencies involve complications like severe bleeding, which cause most of the deaths during delivery, and disorders related to high blood pressure accounted for most deaths from the day of delivery through the 6th day postpartum. Leading causes were cardiovascular disease, and a surprise in the report was how often death occurred after childbirth, more than half of the pregnancy-related deaths in that survey. The standard postpartum doctor visit for new mothers is typically scheduled for 6 weeks after delivery, but one of the recommendations coming out of the study is that postpartum care should be a continual ongoing process starting immediately after birth. But you see, low-income women who qualify for Medicaid often lose coverage 60 days after giving birth. So that gets the issue into policies, money, and politics, of course. I will close on a brightening note. Swedish authorities have announced that they will reopen the investigation into rape allegations against Julian Assange, currently serving a prison term in Britain for having jumped bail. The United States is trying to extradite him, but British officials will determine which case takes precedence. The investigation stems from an accusation in August 2010 made by a Swedish woman who said that Assange had sexually assaulted her. The Swedish authorities then began investigating him that year after 2 women accused him of assaulting them during separate sexual encounters when he was visiting Stockholm. Sweden dropped the investigations after Assange got arrested by the British, but jumped bail and fled to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy to avoid extradition to the U.S. The prosecution in Sweden still falls within the country's 10-year statute of limitations. The United States, of course, wishes to prosecute him on a conspiracy charge over his alleged attempts to assist in one of the largest leaks of classified materials in American history. So he's been hiding in the Ecuadorian embassy in London for 5 years. But somewhere in the process of lawsuits and countersuits involving 4 governments and a lawyer's cast of thousands, several women just might get a bit of justice. We have to take our first break here, but we're just getting started. Fighting Words is yet to come, and our special trio of guests for the conversation. And when we come back from this break, the Surrealism Corner. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
We are back, and in the Surrealism Corner. Trump World Report. The Pentagon is going to pull $1.5 billion out of programs that include the military's next nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile, and a plane that provides surveillance and communications to fighter jets while airborne. And they're doing that in order to fund Trump's border wall. That's according to a Defense Department document obtained by the Washington Post. Such a smart move. Defending us against Honduran and Guatemalan women and children who are fleeing gangs, drugs, and government violence, rather than, say, defending us against adversarial foreign nuclear powers. Those ferocious women and kids, you never know. Happy news, however, from Trump World. Trump Tower in New York is now one of New York City's least desirable luxury buildings. For anybody who owns a unit in the tower, the past 2 years have been really brutal. Most condo sales have led to a loss after adjusting for inflation, as shown by property records. Several sold at more than a 20% loss. By contrast, across Manhattan, just 0.23% of homes over the past 2 years sold at a loss. The commercial portion of the Trump Towers has been struggling for months to find tenants for more than 42,000 square feet of vacant office space, despite advertising rents well below the area's average. Hitting Trump in his pocket hurts him most, and he manages to do it himself by being obnoxious better, far better, than you or I ever could. Environmental item. In the United States, hundreds of millions of straws are used daily. Seattle has banned them. In Los Angeles, if you want a straw, you have to ask for it. Many bars are switching to paper versions. But did you know that humans and straws go way back? The Sumerian civilization, about 4000 BCE, in southern Mesopotamia, used hollow reeds or golden tubes to sip beer. That way they bypassed the gunk left behind from fermentation. In 19th century America, an inventor, Marvin Stone, wrapped paper strips around a pencil, glued and waxed them, and patented his creation in 1888. Then 40 years later, another inventor, Joseph Friedman, put a screw in a straw. Wrapping floss around the screw's thread created small ridges that made the straw bendable, which proved helpful for hospital patients drinking from cups. Only since the polymer boom of the 1960s have straws been made predominantly of plastic, and plastic does not degrade. It gets eaten by and kills sea creatures, and is generally not so good. So bring your own straw with you if you want a straw, or demand paper, or forgo straws altogether. Delving into the past again, about 136,000 years ago, the Aldabran Atoll sank into the Indian Ocean. Now that made life very hard for a bird called the white-throated rail, R-A-I-L. It had colonized the island and became flightless. But now scientists have discovered fossils from both before and after the disappearance of Aldabra, demonstrating that the chicken-sized rail reappeared on the island when sea levels later dropped, and then it again colonized the island and again lost the ability to fly. This is a process with a name. It's called iterative evolution, the repeated evolution of a species from the same ancestor at different times in history, otherwise known as same old, same old. This species, the railbird, apparently has no collective memory or any capacity for learning via its DNA or RNA, so it keeps making the same mistake over and over, becoming extinct as often as it re-evolves to a certain point. Do you think that explains humanity? Sex, rape, and alcohol. We saw it in the case of Brock Turner, the former Stanford athlete found guilty of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman on campus. He appealed his conviction, claiming the victim seemed intoxicated. Fortunately, he lost. We saw it in the confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court, when the fact that his victim in attempted rape had had one beer. Ooh! It's still common to use alcohol to cast doubt on a woman's reputation, especially in cases of sexual assault, both in life and in court. The women's movement has been saying this for near 50 years, and academia, God love it, has now caught up. A new study from the Worcester Polytechnic Institute, the University of Nebraska, and Iowa State University finds that women who drink at all are in fact judged more harshly than men who drink a lot. The study, titled "She Looks Like She Would Be an Animal in Bed: Dehumanization of Drinking Women in Social Contexts," explores the stereotypes applied to women who drink and how presumptions of alcohol and sexual proximity go hand in hand. It's in the May issue of the journal Sex Roles. Researchers found that both women and men believe that a woman drinking alcohol in a social setting is more intoxicated than a man having the same drink, and that she was more sexually available and less human than a woman drinking water or a man drinking alcohol. By less human, they meant such women were perceived to have a lack of self-restraint and were described as mechanical and cold, unsophisticated, superficial, shallow, less intelligent, less rational, and more immoral. So much for daring to have a glass of wine in public. The findings, not surprisingly, have troubling implications, said Janine Skorink, the author of the study and a psychology professor. Among the troubling implications are that people may be less likely to help a woman in a risky situation if she's been drinking, because they might think she's interested in risky or casual sex and therefore not believe the situation is a threat. Skorink said that this is shocking because just holding a beer bottle increased perceptions of intoxication and sexual availability for women, but not for men. Well, duh. We've known this for a long time, but it's always great to be validated by academic studies, because then such findings can be used in court, surreal as they may be. Predators sense vulnerability and will invent it, if necessary, to land their prey. And the word this week from a foreign language that requires a whole sentence in English to approximate its meaning is again from the German language, which makes a habit of these things. The word is Torschluss-Panik. It means closing gates panic, and it describes a situation where, for example, people sense their biological clock is running out and suddenly get obsessed with settling with a partner or having children immediately. And it can also mean that as people age, some older people find themselves very worried about roads not taken or milestones they failed to achieve by a certain age. Torschlusspanik is the feeling of urgency to accomplish something before some imaginary gate closes. The gate is, in many cases, imaginary, just that, surreal. In any case, yes, surreal. Time for another short break. You know the saying, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it? We don't want to repeat the late 1960s, when more women died in the United States of butchered, illegal, backstreet abortions than men died in the Vietnam War. But until the women's movement, there were no demonstrations about those women. Some women did something about it. They called themselves the Jane Collective, and they took matters in hand. And when we return, we'll be speaking with 3 women who made a film about that is stunning and will help those of us who were there remember, and those of us who weren't born yet learn, perhaps for the first time, just what that situation was about, so that we need not repeat it. We'll be right back. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back to the conversation, with 3 women deeply involved in creating the dramatic fictional film based on the dramatic reality when abortion was illegal. Ask for Jane is the film. The reality was in the late 1960s and early 70s, when an underground group of women, ordinary women, college students, housewives, real people, decided enough was enough and began referring women for underground abortions that were safe, even though they were illegal. They called themselves Jane. They were the Jane Collective. And the entire women's movement at that time, of which I was a part, stood in awe of them because their security was incredibly tight. They never postured, they never broke security, and you knew you could trust them. I sent quite a few women to Jane for referrals, and then at a certain point they began performing the procedure themselves after they'd been trained. That was taking a great risk. They were arrested, and then fortunately, just then, Roe v. Wade was passed, and abortion was seen as legal and a woman's right to control her own body and her reproductive existence. These 3 women we'll speak with today include a member of that original collective, as well as 2 other women who were involved in making the film. Judith Arcana, a member of the Jane Collective, yes, she was a real Jane, She was a member of the Chicago Underground Service that helped 11,000 women and girls get safe, illegal abortions. Judith Arcana is a skilled performer, a writer, and presenter who has appeared in a number of documentary films, including the 1995 Jane, an Abortion Service, and the 2014 She's Beautiful When She's Angry, and the 2019 Our Bodies, Our Doctors. A longtime teacher of literature, writing, and women's studies, she has a Ph.D. in literature, an M.A. in women's studies, and an urban preceptorship in preventive medicine, as well as a B.A. in English. Our second guest is Cait Cortelyou, the creator, the producer, and the star of Ask for Jane, the film. Cait is an American actress and filmmaker. She is an alum of the National Theatre Institute at the Tony Award-winning O'Neill Theatre Center in Connecticut and has studied with the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford. A longtime supporter of women's rights and reproductive health, in May of 2016, it was Cait who conceived of the project, Ask for Jane, about a real group of women who provided thousands of safe and illegal abortions in those years, and she enlisted the help of writer Rachel Carey and went on to produce and star in the film. She's also appeared in a recurring role in Steven Soderbergh's The Knick and has a slew of award-winning independent films under her belt. She's a member of acclaimed New York theater company The Shelter, the New York Women in Film and Television, and is an activist with Planned Parenthood. And the third woman we'll speak with today in this group is Carolyn Hirsch, who is well known as the founder and owner of the New York Comedy Club, Carolyn's Club on Broadway, as well as the New York Comedy Festival. She is a producer of Ask for Jane. She is an activist. She served on the National Advisory Board of Count Me In, a micro-lending organization for women, and she formerly sat on the board of the Ms. Foundation for Women. During her tenure on the Ms. board, Hirsch created the successful Take Our Daughters to Work initiative. She's the mother of that. She's received numerous awards, and I'm sure as producer of Ask for Jane, she's receiving and about to receive even more. Here are Judith Arcana, Cait Cortelyou, and Carolyn Hirsch. Welcome to the program. We have three makers and shakers of the film Ask for Jane with us today. Cait Cortelyou, who is the creator, the producer, and the star of the film.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's a delight to have you, Cait. And we have Carolyn Hirsch, who not only is Carolyn of Carolyn's Comedy Club, but is the producer of Ask for Jane. Welcome, Carolyn.
Welcome. Thank you.
And we have a member of the original Jane Collective, great Judith Arcana. I remember well those days. So these are the three people. And Caitlin, I'm going to ask that you start out by telling people who may not know, believe it or not, what the Jane Collective was and why it was necessary, and a brief word about why you felt so compelled to do the film.
Oh boy, it's funny to explain about it when we've got Judith right here too.
Well, she'll fill in details.
This is Cait Cortelyou speaking. So the Jane Collective was a group of women in Chicago in the late 1960s and early 70s who formed an underground abortion referral service back before Roe versus Wade was passed in 73. And they ended up learning how to do the procedure themselves, and they ended up helping over 11,000 women. So our film, Ask for Jane, is based on that true story. It's a fictional film, though. It's a narrative based on true events. And audiences have been responding very positively. So I'm excited for us to open in theaters this Friday.
Yeah, well, I was there. I used to refer women to Jane. It performed an absolutely invaluable service, and it's so important that the film is coming out now when reproductive rights are so threatened by the far right. Carolyn, you are known for wit and comedy. How did you get involved in producing this film?
Well, I'm also a member of New York Women in Film and TV, and I met Cait through their website. And Cait was telling me about this story, and I was so intrigued about it. I kind of went to school in the 70s, and I didn't know anything about this. And I said, wow, I want to know more about this. And Cait came to me, and we discussed it, and I said, I'm going to try to help you get this produced. I read the script that Rachel Carey wrote and who later directed the movie, and I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear about these fabulous women and brave women and what they did.
Yeah.
And we eventually got, and Cait put this together, and Cait drove it and made this movie.
And she's excellent in it, I might add. Judith.
Oh, thank you.
Judith, you're the real thing. You're a Jane. We are of a generation, and I remember well the work that Jane did. I used to refer to people to them. There was one doctor I vaguely recall, I think he was in Pennsylvania, it was a guy, who was really decent and that we all used a lot. How do you think of the film, and is it weird to see your real life depicted on screen?
It isn't weird, actually. It's kind of cool, I think.
It's very cool.
After all, I'm a writer. I have written many poems and now stories as well that are made up stuff completely seeded by and rooted in the actual happenings of those years from my perspective. And that is exactly what Cait and Rachel and Josh and the other folks who all, the entire collective efforts of a whole community that made that movie, that's what they're doing. And I think it's fascinating, actually, to see a fictional piece that is, as Cait said, and as is always printed in the credits before and or after, based on a real story.
Right.
And the fact that I was in the real story, I'm sure all of you will understand when I tell you that not all the Janes think exactly the same thing. We didn't then, and we don't now, about what we were doing and how it all went. So that part is fascinating as well. Here are these people who weren't even there, and they have a story about it too.
Yes.
And also it's extremely valuable. I'm so glad that people are using what we did to do what they need to do, what all of us need to do in the present.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know that Mary McCarthy, the writer, once said, when she was asked why she writes fiction, she said, I write fiction so that I can tell the truth.
Very similar to, yes, I remember that. And also Doris Lessing has a great line like that. Grace Paley, of course, has a great line like that. And they're all right for exactly the reason you quoted.
Yes, precisely. Yes. I mean, and the film does get to, what I love about the film is that it brings out the reality that you Janes were ordinary women, young women. You weren't, fiery, raging revolutionaries. You didn't necessarily, maybe one or two came out of the civil rights movement or the left. But, I mean, these were ordinary people who just decided, this is really outrageous. Women are dying, and did something about it and risked their freedom and their lives. You were busted, fortunately, just around the time that Roe came in. So it's imperative. I don't think people today, particularly younger people, understand just how horrific it was to have no access to control one's own reproductive rights, and the role that the Janes played. And the film really does bring that out very palpably. And so I think it's educative and also real drama in a time where, with Alabama now mounting the most draconian anti-abortion laws ever, and Georgia in close pursuit, we are under real assault for this, and they want us to take court cases all the way to the court, and they think the court will, undo Roe. So, Caitlin, when you were putting this together, did you think particularly that it was needed for this time, or were you mostly just drawn by the drama of the story? And a hell of a good part.
Well, sort of the latter, actually, because this was, movies take a long time to make. So I first heard about this story in 2016. It was before the election. And I really didn't, I'm an aggressive optimist, I like to say. And I really didn't think that we would be in the political climate that we are right now.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was a stunning story, and it made me upset that I hadn't heard it before, because I think it's an integral piece of women's history,
Yes.
and it shouldn't be erased. It should be taught in schools. Everybody should know about it.
Yes.
And as you were saying about fiction being the way to tell the truth, I felt like a narrative film was the way to tell this story and to have people really hear what each woman might be going through and to get a feel for what it was like to be there in a more palpable way than a documentary might be able to get across.
Yes, exactly. And also the strife within the collective. Part of me winces when I hear the word collective because of my experiences in the 60s and 70s, but part of me also laughs with delight. And all of those ambiguities are brought out, particularly the splits in the collective when they decide that they have to do the procedure themselves. Carolyn, talk a little bit about that moment.
Well, there's another reason why, I wanted to get involved with this, because not only it's so relevant right now with what's happening.
Yes.
But when we started this, it was that I wanted to show younger women that you didn't always have this freedom. You did not have this choice.
Precisely.
Okay? It was not there, and then it was given to us. And we're on the road right now back to having it taken away.
Right.
I mean, Clarence Thomas is right now fishing on how he can reverse this. It was posted this morning in the Daily Beast about he just showed how the Supreme Court could overturn Roe versus Wade.
Oh, thanks, Clarence.
So it's part of the plan here to get this into courts and about what they're doing in every state now. Look, women don't even this whole thing in Georgia and Alabama and Kentucky is just as bad. Is that women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks.
Of course.
This is just a horrible, horrible thing that has been passed.
Yeah.
And we want young women to know this so that they know that they need to get out and protect this for themselves.
Yeah.
And that was really the motive behind the movie then, and little did we know what was happening now. So
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely terrifying. Judith, since you were there and I was there, what do you think? Are we just refighting the same thing over and over and over again? Do you despair? Do you Pat Schroeder used to say you can't roll up your sleeves and wring your hands at the same time. What do you, with the experience of having been a Jane, what do you think should be done right now?
Well, actually, I think, and this has been my extremely happy experience, pardon me for introducing happiness.
No, go for it.
Example, and it is this. I often go to events. I'm asked to do much of what you're asking us to do on this, in this interview, Robin, which is to talk about the past and apply it to the present. And I meet over and over again many, many, many young women who are on the case big time, really serious, big-time organizers, activists. Yes. They're raising money. They're helping people find the services they need. And, of course, even though Roe has not yet been completely torpedoed, in much of this nation, it is almost impossible to find abortion health care. So that for many women, more than 90% of the counties in this country have no abortion health care available. So for many women and girls and trans folks with uteruses, there's nowhere to go. There isn't enough money. It's very like what it was like. But people don't realize that because, quote unquote, Roe's still on the books.
Yeah.
And there are underground I don't like to talk about specifics, of course.
No, naturally
but
not.
There's action. There's definitely action. And, of course, this is going on all over the world, as you know.
Yes.
The most recent triumphs are Poland and Ireland, but there are many other places that are as backward as the United States, or I'd like to say worse, but maybe we're down in the worst section right now.
We're in a bad section, yeah. There's women on waves and women on the web, which we've covered on this program. I mean, there's a different kind of action using the new technology now, and that's heartening. But I think this country in particular is so ahistorical that we forget. I mean, and we're encouraged to forget what it was like 5 minutes ago. So really? I think in addition to being intelligent entertainment, the film Ask for Jane, which has won many festival awards from, I think, 14 film festivals. In addition to that, it is really a consciousness changer for people who think well, I have the right to an abortion, and I can have one. Da-dum. Or I can travel to another state, which of course is not true for poor women, for most women, in fact.
Right.
And spend 3 days waiting in another. I mean, it has been made so unconstitutionally oppressive and difficult that in many places, as you say, it is already virtually not a possibility. So they've been successful so far, and they're just a few inches away from overturning Roe. Will the film be, any of you, will the film be available not only, it moves into theaters now, yes? And will it be available for groups to rent for community showings and things like that?
I would certainly hope so. Right now, we are opening at the Village East in New York City this Friday, the 17th. Showtimes are on their website. They're available now. You can buy tickets. And then after that, we hope to open in other cities and eventually be on a streaming platform. And I always envisioned this being shown in schools and communities. I think it's a great tool.
Yes, it is. I mean, there's something about a film that grips people, and it is very gripping. There are very funny moments. There are enormously touching moments. Judith, you must have been moved by the fact that there was a personal cost that many of the Janes suffered in their relationships, in their jobs. Did this remind you of the old days?
Oh, absolutely. And I was very fortunate in that once Cait and I were emailing furiously across the continent, one of the things that she and the other folks did was invite me to come for the shoot. So I was actually on the set for one day and also did what I believe in the industry is called a table read with, not my world, but I learned language. I'm a word woman. And so I met the actors, and then I was there, and I can still remember Rachel, the director and scriptwriter, what she said, what she did, why she did stuff over again. And it was about really what you're asking, because what she wanted, what everyone involved wanted, was the kind of impact that you are talking about,
yes,
Robin, the kind of impact that is so necessary from both fiction films and documentaries. There is, by the way, a new documentary coming out sometime in the next lifetime. But for sure, this film has in it the emotional, the political, the socio-cultural pieces that were all present through this fiction, through this story based on what really went down. I mean, really, if you're going to make a movie about the Civil War, if you're going to make a movie about the Civil Rights Movement, you would be doing a fiction film. You would be doing much the same thing. You could not avoid the things you're asking me about, Robin.
That's right.
If you wanted
That's
to
right.
make a real thing.
When you were a Jane, what drew you to the collective? How did you become involved?
Well, I became involved because I thought I was pregnant in 1970, and my life was in turmoil. It would have been a very bad time to make a new person, bad for that new person. And so I asked around, and I was directed to the service. I was told, call this number and ask for Jane. And I wound up having a couple of very long conversations with a woman who said her name was Jane. Later, I would be one of the people saying my name was Jane. Of course. And so we had these great conversations, a total stranger, mind you. And then she said to me at some point, I think you might be interested. We're going to take in some new people in a couple months. Shall I call you? And I said, I think that's a good idea. And so I went, and as it happened, the orientation, this meeting that she sent me to, was literally 2 blocks from my apartment in a little church at the corner of my street. And I just thought, yeah, I can get there pretty easily. And when I was there talking to these Janes and the other women who had come out of interest like mine, it just felt, you all know how this is. You find yourself in a situation, and then you think, yes, Yes,
This fits.
I am going to do this.
Yes, yes. How amazing. I mean,
Righteous work.
Righteous work. But when people use the excuse, oh, well, I'm not a radical, or I'm not a revolutionary, or I can't take the risk, it's so important. And very often in those days, the male left positioned itself and postured that way. And what's so moving about Jane's, and in fact, the film, is that the average, we're scared, we're young, we're in college, but we have to do something, we have to act. And they sort of held hands and kept each other going in a very unpretentious, focused, practical way, without pomposity, without posturing, with very good, tight security, but without any of the, security that the weather people did. It is so human. And was so successful and saved so many lives. I think it was 11,000 women that passed through Jane's doors, many doors. And I want to thank you, Judith, and the originals for everything that you did, and that you've continued to do yourself as a writer and a performer. And thank you, Carolyn, for producing this and weighing in and getting the backing, because we need it. And thank you, Cait, for a beautiful performance and for the idea of doing it, because it's a real tool in the hands of women to educate ourselves and each other about our past that's been buried, and to better equip ourselves for dealing with what's facing us right now. You've been amazing. You can find the website askforjane.com and find out where it's playing. Get it for your neighborhood. Educate yourselves and each other about what it was really like, because if you don't, those days can be on us again in just an eye blink. Thanks again.
Yes, Gloria Steinem said every American should see this movie.
It's very true. Actually, I think everybody in the world should see this movie, because America can't claim to be so bloody special when we've fallen down on the list of maternal deaths and on the list of particularly Black, Native, and Alaska Native women's deaths in maternity. I mean, it's a shocking record that we have. So thank you again for everything you do, and it's a terrific film. I'm going to get everybody I know to go.
Oh,
okay.
Well, we'll see you there.
All right.
Time for our final break today, and then coming right up after that are some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
And we're back with some fighting words. Right to the point, Alabama has fired the first nuclear weapon in the war to determine women's rights of choosing our own reproductive lives. Georgia is close behind. These 2 and the other 9 states trying to enact so-called heartbeat laws have been making increasing forays and assaults for a long time now, ranging from draconian requirements for clinics to encouraging relentless harassment of, and even violence against, providers and the women in need. This time is different, with a creature in the White House who will say and do anything to keep power. The bigots and racists in our society have been validated, supported, even encouraged, and the anti-choice crusaders have been emboldened. Alabama has, in effect, outlawed abortion. Someone said to me yesterday, "Oh, but that won't stand up in court." This entirely misses the point. Because such laws defy federal law, of course it will go to court, and even in Alabama is likely to lose. But whichever side wins, it will be appealed by the loser, and appealed again, and again making its way up to the Supremes, which is exactly what the anti-choicers have planned all along, just waiting for the moment when the Supreme Court was right-wing enough so that it will overturn Roe. The justification will be, well, it's up to the states. You can have it in the states. The states, well, that means that if not already hustling at the state level, we must begin yesterday to ensure that each state legalizes the procedure, as well as a woman's right to contraception, by the way, because that's next. Younger women are fierce and wonderful and active on this issue, but there are still many of them, and not only young ones, who have no idea how many women in the United States died, approximately 10,000 women a year, from illegal backstreet abortions. We fight on multiple fronts, federal and state, and international even, because the gag rule affects our foreign policy and our United Nations work. The state level is where most restrictions take place, though, and if Roe is overthrown, each state will make its own laws. This creates such arguments as, oh, well, a woman can always pop next door to another state where it's legal. But most women cannot. The next state isn't always next door. Think the size of Montana or Texas. Furthermore, getting together the money to travel, whether by plane, unlikely, or paid public transport, or even gas for a car, that's outside the reach of many women. Plus leaving her job for 3 or 4 days, and possibly leaving her kids for 3 or 4 days, and her other responsibilities, plus the cost of a hotel and food, and the cost of the procedure itself makes it literally impossible for her to just pop next door. Meanwhile, there are so many stereotypes out there. For example, anti-choicers have been successful as portraying abortion as dangerous, and abortionists as money grabbers, and women who need abortions as being selfish or sluttish, or at the very least confused. So each of us needs to know and tell others some hard facts. 59% of abortions are obtained by women who already have children. The vast majority of women who have abortions never regretted having done so. The majority of the American populace is pro a woman's right to choose. Abortion does not cause breast or other cancer, suicide, or any such negative side effects other than possibly upsetting your evangelistic neighbors. The risk of death due to childbirth is 14 times greater than the risk of death from abortion. And while we're on childbirth risks, in a follow-up to what we touched on earlier, 13 white women die for every 100,000 live births. The rate for Latinas is lower, 11.4. The rate for African American women, however, is 42.8 women dying for every 100,000 live births, almost half. And for Native American, Alaska Native women, 32.5. Age increases the risk. Mothers age 40 and over have a pregnancy-related death rate of 76.5 per 100,000 live births. And again, while childbirth death rates are shrinking globally, here in the United States, they are rising and expanding. These figures, and the racial component in these figures, offer us a connect-the-dots moment, too. There's a large African-American population, 28% in Alabama, and the black population of Georgia is 34%. American women, especially American women of color, already and absurdly are dying in childbirth, and may soon also be dying of abortion. Again, bleeding out in the agonies of terror and pain on bathroom floors of dorm rooms and sorority houses, on kitchen tables where mafia doctors wield their implements and send you off to go to the hospital and die, or in secret provider offices arranged by an underground women's movement willing to risk 99-year prison sentences. But we're different now. We're enraged and we're organized. Criminalizing sex and pregnancy management will provoke women in far greater numbers than we showed before Roe passed. We will demonstrate massive civil disobedience and shut the society down. We don't want this. I don't want this. I wanted to grow old with a little bit of quiet more in my life, more rumination, more writing. But if they are going to take down a woman's human right to her own bodily integrity, they're going to have to take me down first. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for today. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRobinMorgan and on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRobinMorgan. Check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for our show. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.